Hello viewers, welcome to the program Safe Life. I am Ishimwe Kathy, and today we are going to be talking about climate change and water resources. And on the show, I am joined by Dr. Kalisti Tindimgaya. You're most welcome to the show. Please say hello to the viewers.
Hello viewers, thank you very much for having me today.
Well, straight away, would you please tell us the link between water and environment?
Yes, water and environment are related. They are actually brothers and sisters. Our environment, when we talk about the environment, we talk about things that surround us. We talk about wetlands, we talk about forests, we talk about rivers, we talk about even people are part of the environment. So when we talk about water and environment, water is part of the environment. And because of that, we always link water and environment, and they go hand in hand, because if there's no water, there's no environment. If there's no environment, then there's no water.
Okay. And then how does climate change affect Uganda in general?
Well, climate change in Uganda is actually manifest in a number of ways. Too much water causing floods, too little water causing drought, too dirty water causing pollution, and also sometimes landslides. So when we have too much water, then obviously it can cause damage. It can destroy infrastructure, can displace people, can actually destroy the general environment we live in. But also if you have too little water, then we don't have enough water to use. So climate, if not well regulated, if not well managed, can actually affect our water resources and the people that depend on the water resources.
Okay. How is Uganda responding to climate change, especially from the point of view of water resource?
Yes, right now we are trying to manage the too much water, again, to make sure that water doesn't become a problem, but it becomes an opportunity. They always argue that water is life if we are not living in Bwaise. Indeed, water is life. Sure. We depend on it for our survival. But when you are in Bwaise, when you are in Kasese, when you are in those areas which flood, then when you see water, you start getting worried. So we are now putting in place measures to manage that water so that it becomes an opportunity and doesn't become a problem. And how do we do it? Okay. We put in place a number of measures. One, we harvest this water, some of it on the roof. You have seen people having the water tanks on their houses. Yes, so we're harvesting this water so that instead of it running on the surface and maybe destroying the infrastructure, displacing people, then we use it for our purposes at home. We're also harvesting water through construction of dams and valley tanks. We construct them in various parts of the country so that when the water is available, we store it and then it is available for use in those periods when we don't have it. We are also, of course, again, as I said, water is part of the environment. We are promoting tree planting so that trees reduce the speed at which the water flows. But the trees are the ones which make water keep actually moving around into the atmosphere. We talk of the water cycle. Also restoring wetlands, also harvesting water on the land. We are also ensuring that we clean and ensure that those drainage channels which take water actually are well cleaned of any material. You have seen maybe in some drainage channels people have thrown in the rubbish. So soil waste management becomes important, but also the silting of some of the rivers and the lakes. Those are a few things that we are doing to address this challenge. And of course, when that water is stored, when that water is managed, then when there is no rainfall in the dry season, then that water is available to be used by the people.
Well, why should an ordinary Uganda like me be concerned about climate change? Actually, is climate change good or bad? Okay,
first of all, if climate change actually is manifest in terms of rising temperature, increased rainfall, and when we have increased rainfall, this is the one that actually turns into water. So in situations where people actually in the dry areas, when the water increases, then it becomes a problem.
Sure.
So actually in that situation, if climate change is resulting in increased rainfall, and some areas have been receiving little rainfall, then it becomes an opportunity. But in some areas where we have just generally been having normal rainfall, the rainfall we need for our usual purposes, if it increases, then you have a problem. And that's why right now we're having flooding, for example, in Kampala. If it rains for a short period, you see Kampala flooding, you see traffic jams,
Yeah,
people are
sure.
stuck, people cannot move. So in that situation, it is bad. But there is also the good side to climate change. Right now, we're having funds that have been allocated for climate change by the international community. We have, for example, a fund managed under Adaptation Fund, the Green Climate Fund, the Global Environment Facility. So for us as Uganda, climate change has also given us an opportunity to actually mobilize funds from the various funding agencies. But for the people, it has also given them an opportunity to also get money which they can use on the ground as they address the challenges of climate change and also general development.
Talking about the challenges of climate change, what is the government doing to make sure that they address these challenges?
Well, government is doing a number of things. Right now, for example, government has put in place a climate change policy that sets a strategic direction on how we are going to respond to climate change as a country. And here we're addressing in an integrated way. Government, civil society, private sector, academia, the media, everybody. So that climate change policy has set a direction for Uganda to respond to climate change in various ways. Address climate change through water, through health, through agriculture, through industry and all of that. But also, government has also put in place a Raw Climate Change Act. And this now gives a legal basis for what we do. Meaning that if, for example, you are doing things that are causing harm to Uganda and also making climate change situation worse, then there is a legal framework. But also, the legal framework has helped us set the rules of the game, institutions, and then we'll be having the do's and the don'ts. So we have that. So the institutions, they are there, the laws are there, but also we have a number of activities that are going on in the various parts of the country. And as I mentioned, climate change is not only a government responsibility, it is for everybody. So whatever we are doing, we have to address climate change. So again, we have provided frameworks where all the stakeholders can come together and contribute to climate change. But we have a number of programs that are going on the ground to improve people's ability to deal with climate change, improve their resilience.
Talking about those programs, we would like to know a part of those programs that are going on currently and what each program is doing.
Okay, right now you probably could have heard there's been a lot of flooding going on in various parts of the country. Right now we have a big program in Kasese, which is trying to address flooding in River Nyamwamba. So that program is cleaning the river. The river was filled up with very, very huge stones coming from Mount Rwenzori. So whenever it would rain, the water would actually not flow. So right now we have a program, we have funding from the World Bank, where we are cleaning the river and removing those borders, but we're also protecting the banks of the river. Because whenever it would rain, the water would now find its way to destroy schools, hospitals, roads, bridges. But right now the program is helping to clean the river and also protect those areas which actually have been destroyed. We are also protecting the area where the water is coming from so that we can reduce the speed of water. So for example, we now have water harvesting activities where we are harvesting water on the farm, on the land. And this water is going underground. It is actually improving soil moisture, and we have seen productivity increasing in people's lands. But the aim is really to store the water so that we can reduce the speed. We have also had, under that program, people have been settling close to the river. And whenever the water would come, it would kill people. Actually, these days when floods happen in Kasese, in Nyamwamba, you don't hear people dying. Why? Because we have removed people from the riverbank protection area and we have given them alternatives income, because many of them have been there to survive. So right now we have actually, again, through a highly consultative manner, got them out of those flood-prone areas. They have moved, but we have given them incentives, other activities. For example, many people were there, they were involved in agriculture, but we have supported them now to do, for example, fish farming outside the protection area. We have supported them. Some of them are involved in beekeeping. Some of them are actually involved in fruit tree growing. We even have the youth who are using those stones that have been in the river, now they are producing products so that they can actually benefit.
Well, still about the flooding, what is the country doing? What else is the country doing to address these challenges of flooding?
It's actually addressing flooding requires a multi-pronged approach. As I mentioned, when, for example, you have hills which are bare, there is no tree, then when it rains, the water will come at a very high speed and will remove the soil. Then you find that the soil fertility is actually reducing. And that's why you find that most of the fertile soil has actually gone to wetlands. So people are following the fertile soil in wetlands. Sure. So we are now having activities, government is having a program on soil and water conservation so that the hills are protected, especially in hill areas like Kabale, like Soro, like Wenzo, like Keregon. We are now helping people to actually put in place terraces.
Okay.
Now, those are lands which used not to produce any crops. Now, people are turning them into productive areas. But for us, from the climate change point of view, we are reducing the speed at which the water is moving, but also we are ensuring that those productive areas, those barren areas can be productive so that people don't go to the wetlands and destroy wetlands. Okay. Wetlands are stores of water. They clean the water. So if they are removed, then when the water comes, it will move very fast. We also have tree planting. Right now, I have tree planting going on in the whole country. And really, it's a massive program. Again, when you have trees and the water comes, it will actually not move very fast. The trees will help to reduce the speed. Okay. Again, as I mentioned, we are also having construction of some water harvesting structures. Now we are promoting rainwater harvesting from roofs. Again, that one helps to address climate change, but it is benefiting people, it is providing them water. You can imagine if you are at home, after it has rained, you are going to look for water from a well. Sure. And yet the water was there. So again, we are looking at these interventions are becoming multi-purpose. You address climate change, but also improve the access to safe water. We are also, of course, also trying to address climate change through promoting climate resilient, for example, plants, seedlings. If, for example, people are growing crops, maize, we are now under Ministry of Agriculture, we are having the climate resilient options where, again, you can grow crops that can survive even when there is a drought. So, again, we address floods, we address droughts, we also address landslides. And so it's a multi-pronged approach, but at the heart of that are the people.
Well, true. Talking about the people, what should people do to protect themselves against the effects of climate change? Because we believe the government cannot do it alone. You need people to also help out to make sure that all your efforts are not going in vain.
Actually, I think the issue I've raised is very, very important because climate change actually is manifest through the local environment. Because where does flooding occur? Where does droughts occur? Where do landslides occur? They occur where the people are.
Yeah, true.
And who is affected? It's the ordinary person on the ground.
Definitely.
So as part of government efforts, we have actually emphasized the involvement of the people. Because if the people are not involved, then whatever you are putting in place doesn't work, but you are doing it for them. So at the end of the day, if you are doing something for somebody and you don't involve that person, then there's no ownership. So the people right now are at the heart of climate change action.
Wow, that's good.
We want the people, like for example, who is destroying the environment, who is cutting trees, who is actually degrading the wetlands, it is
people.
us, all of us.
Yeah,
so the people at the heart, we engage them first of all to understand that climate change is real, it's no longer a talk. We know that we have to work together to be able to live with it. We are working with people to improve their resilience, their ability, that even when there is a change, they can survive. And normally when somebody doesn't have financial resources, even doesn't have the knowledge, even something small will happen. Like as I mentioned in Kasese, whenever it would rain, whenever it would flood, people would not run away. They remain in their gardens. And then you hear people have died. But right now, their awareness has been raised. Their capacity has been developed to respond. Even now, when the flooding comes, you see people running and climbing on the hills, or even going on top of the buildings because they have been trained and their awareness has been raised. But the action we take on the ground. For example, the people are the ones who plant trees. We are promoting tree planting on people's land. So they are the ones involved in that. Wetlands, some of the wetlands are in people's land, so they are the ones who protect the wetlands. But the income generating activities, the livelihood options we are promoting, actually being driven by the people. And that's something that has come in to interest people to actually move forward. So in that regard, whatever we do on the ground is actually done with the people and for the people.
Okay. And then how are water and climate change funded currently?
As of now, we, as I mentioned, climate change is a new kid on the block, I would say. But of course, the government of Uganda has always funded the program. So we have activities which we implement, which are aimed at addressing climate change specifically, but the activities which address development. So there are activities which address both. It's not only climate change. As I mentioned, if, for example, you're harvesting water on the roof, that water, you need that water anyway, whether there is climate change or not.
Sure.
So you can get funding actually from government, from a donor to have for water harvesting, but for us, then you will have addressed climate change. So we have sources from government, Uganda government, as part of its national budget. We have resources from our development partners, bilateral donors. We have resources from NGOs, private sector. But more specifically, now we have started getting resources from climate financing windows. As I said, the international community has created a number of funding windows for climate change. One of them is under the Adaptation Fund, and then another one on Green Climate Fund. Then also a environment facility. And those funding windows allow countries to apply there. Right now we have a number of projects we are implementing that have benefited from those funding windows, and these are grants. We have, for example, I've just completed a project we have implemented in the Acholi region, Lango, Teso, and Kigezi region on enhancing the resilience of the communities to impacts of climate change. So it's about close to $8 million grant. We have actually recently also received another grant of $10 million. We'll be working in Eastern Uganda around Butareja, Tororo, also helping people to address climate change, and under there we'll also be providing water supply. We'll also be helping people to actually protect themselves against climate change.
Well, you talked about adaptation. It also comes along with another term that is mitigation. What do these terms actually mean to an ordinary Ugandan? How should we understand them? Please help us understand this.
Okay, thank you very much. Actually, climate change, those two terms are the ones we talk about every day. Now, mitigation, in climate change terms, we are trying to reduce the maybe just start by indicating that what causes climate change. Climate change actually is caused by the emission of greenhouse gases in the atmosphere. So those greenhouse gases, when they reach the atmosphere, they form like a blanket. It would be like when you are sleeping at home and it's cold, you cover yourself with a blanket. So when those greenhouse gases go into the atmosphere, they form what is like a blanket. And then they store the heat. And that's why, for example, right now, the temperatures are going up because of climate change. So climate change results in change in temperature and also in rainfall. So those greenhouse gases, when they reach the atmosphere, they form a blanket. And if we don't reduce on the emission of those greenhouse gases, then the blanket will become thicker and thicker, and the temperatures will increase. And that's why the international community has agreed that we have to take actions to reduce on emission of greenhouse gases so that we can actually reduce on the impacts of climate change. If we don't do that, then it is going to continue getting hotter and hotter, and we might even reach and you cannot even walk around. So mitigation is about reducing the emission of greenhouse gases into the atmosphere. And these gases, for example, come from emission from cars. And that's why Uganda has been talking about reducing the number of old cars coming to Uganda. So when the cars are there, you can see the smoke, all of that goes into the atmosphere and all of that, burning rubbish and all of that. But most of the greenhouse gases come from the developed countries. Those are the ones which have really a lot of emissions, and they are They are the ones whom we are telling them to actually compensate us by giving us funds. Adaptation is about taking actions to live with climate change. You can't stop it, but you do what? You can't stop it, but you reduce the impacts.
Okay.
Yes.
Are there any incentives that the government is giving to people to protect the water and the environment resources?
Right now, what the government is doing is, first of all, realizing that a hungry person or a poor person cannot actually take any action.
Okay.
So what the government is doing is getting people to realize that it's not about, for example, telling you to get out of the wetland. It's not about government saying you plant trees on your land or harvest water on your land. It's for your benefit.
Okay.
So what incentive government is giving to the people is now to take actions that are going to increase their incomes and also create jobs. So many of the actions we are putting in place now to help climate change, adaptation and mitigation are now being packaged so that they become income generating activities. That's why, for example, we say, if we get people out of a wetland, do you just tell them to go and die? No, they have to survive. Right now, we have actually created what are called water and environment cooperatives. We are getting people to cooperate around managing water and environment resources and using these resources to give them jobs and improve their incomes. And through that, then people are really taking action without anybody forcing them, just because they are seeing the benefits out of those. And all actions now are geared towards having a livelihood and income generating activity as part of the incentive.
Okay. Would you give us examples of mitigation and adaptation related to water?
Yes, mitigation, again, activities which are related to mitigation. Again, mitigation is reducing the emission of greenhouse gases. So tree planting, the trees actually suck those greenhouse gases. You could have heard of carbon trade. The developed countries are actually promoting tree planting so that you have trees that suck the greenhouse gases from the atmosphere and reduce. That's mitigation. But also solid waste. When, for example, the solid waste is not well managed, or even when people are burning the solid waste outside, then they are emitting greenhouse gases. So managing solid waste and turning waste into wealth is important. And of course, adaptation, again, as I mentioned, adaptation is to be able to live with these climate challenges. So water harvesting is one of them, because when you harvest water and you store it, then you stop it from causing a dam. Again, environmental protection, wetland restoration is the key. Wetland restoration is actually both a mitigation and adaptation measure, so it gives us more benefit. Water harvesting on the land, construction of some terraces, for example, stone bands, check dams, and all of that. Those are the kind of measures. And also even ensuring that we enforce, because we have to enforce the law. So again, if you enforce the law, then you make sure that people actually comply with these challenges.
Sure. What is your advice to the general public in terms of protecting?
Honorable Gonahasa Francis, who was here in the 10th Parliament. We also lost a spouse to Honorable Mutembule Yusuf, that is the MP of Bunyole East. And then we've had a resurgence of murders in Masaka.